Hey, good evening, good morning in some cases, good afternoon in some cases also. Welcome in. You can see on the screen beside us, Irish NFL show. I thought the video would pop off, but it doesn't. Welcome in, everyone. Michael McQuaid, Colum, Cronin, Brian O'Leary. Lads, welcome in. Monday night after a crazy, exciting, and just a memorable week one. Colum, how are you doing, man? You good?
Just got to get myself off of the mute button there. Very good. Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic collection of games yesterday, both in the early suite and the late games. I did not stay up for the late game, but the other ones featured some fantastic football.
Brian, how you doing, man? Good?
Good, yeah, very good. I have to say it was a very enjoyable week one. Some very entertaining games. That witching hour is always between 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, half 9 our time was just relentless, in particular around special teams and kickers. Special weekend for all NFL fans across the country, to see the game back, but not such a special teams weekend, shall we say, with the amount of games that came down to kicks and last second field goals. And that Steelers game kind of says it all around how important it is in the league to have a solid kicker. And I think we're going to get into all those little bits of information throughout the course of the next hour and a half. So
we are indeed. We're presented by Cassidy Travel, Ireland's #1 travel agent. You can get your own personalised NFL holiday. Just go to CassidyTravel.ie or search Cassidy Travel on your search provider. And you can also get a link in the bio for NFL Game Pass. NFL Game Pass obviously showing games that aren't on television. Check it out. If you click the link and sign up, it supports us. So thank you very much for doing so. Colin, how did you enjoy week one last night? The funny thing was I was chatting last night to somebody else and I was saying first 30 or 40 minutes was like pretty dead. There was like 4 or 5 touchdowns, wasn't there? It was an interesting one.
Well, I suppose it's a little bit of chess early on as people kind of ease into the new season and getting used to it. But it quickly, I think, got into it. And I think you saw there the difference to me in terms of the college game and the NFL. College game is very enjoyable, but you have blowouts in college games on a much more frequent basis. How many games yesterday again came down to the last couple of minutes, the last kick into overtime. So it's all on the line. It's what we love about the game. And again, when this is a league, any given Sunday, all the cliches ring true because it is the case. There were some games there. None of us gave the Giants a chance. None of us gave the Bears a chance. And then look what went and happened yesterday.
Brian, we've had a discussion on this broadcast over the last few months, and I know Colum's very passionate about this, about the preseason and about the usefulness of the preseason. It was clear last night in numerous cases that numerous offenses were quite jaded or quite rusty. Have you changed your mind on even some sort of preseason action in that sense? I mean, we're going into a game tonight where the main quarterback for a team hasn't played a snap all season. I'm not saying it's imperative, but the first hour it did take a bit to get off last night. I mean, there's no denying it.
Yeah, and I'll give you an interesting one, Michael. And look, people will say it was an expected result anyway, but the team who actually spent most of the preseason in terms of having most of their first team players out on the field was the Chiefs. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they rocked up with 5 touchdowns last night. Mahomes seemed very comfortable in that performance last night. And I don't know what you can legislate it all to pre-season. Maybe it's the fact that the Cards were on a hiding to nothing because they had so many injuries, both offensively and defensively. But it does ring true that for the first hour, as you said, there was only a handful of touchdowns. There was a bit of weather involved in that. Like some of the games, okay, the weather wasn't as bad as people had forecasted from Wednesday towards the onwards, but I suppose Colum's alluded to, defenses seem to be getting a hold of the games, but as the games gradually went on throughout the course of the evening, the offenses started to get the grips with the games, and in the end they found their way. Like there was some very high scoring games and some games that weren't as high scoring as we thought. Like for example in the Chargers game, we all expected a 36-33 humdinger. Didn't really materialise that way, and we felt the same with the Packers game. Didn't play out that way. There was, again, it's it's a mixed bag because some teams defensively were on top, and then there's other games where you would expect the defenses to be well ahead of the curve, just what wasn't the case. So a lot to get through.
Let's start getting through it in our first segment. We're going to look at the Bears beating the Niners. I actually produced a show for the Niners last night, right? And they said it wasn't a shock result, Colum. Now, they don't think it was a shock result because in their eyes, Trey Lance is still pretty much a rookie. I think he played, like, was it a third of his snaps last night in his career in that game? That being said, the Bears were sitting 7-0 down at halftime. Justin Fields only had 121 yards on the day passing, but obviously the weather was a considerable issue in Chicago. Is this an upset, or do you think the combination of, well, for me personally, I'll even fire mine in the hat now, Trey Lance maybe not being experienced enough and having that news that morning with George Kittle obviously not being active, do you think that was a factor, or do you give the hey-ho to the Bears in the second half?
There are certainly factors, but to me, you got to give kudos to the Bears because it would have been very easy. You know, the 49ers, I'm sure they themselves will say, "Oh yeah, not an upset. All is fine here." But the Bears struggled in that first half. Would have been very easy to let the heads drop, but they didn't. And in kudos to the field, he showed the sort of leadership that you want to see in your young QB. I thought they were very impressive in the second half. And I think the other thing, and the 49ers, they can say what they want, but they were totally ill-disciplined. To give away 12 penalties, 99 yards, some of the late hits that they put in on Fields, that is, you know, like crazy sorts of stuff. The Bears had 15 first downs in the game. 5 of those were the result of 49er penalties. That is the type of stuff that will absolutely crucify you. And the 49ers need to get that cleaned up and quickly because it won't matter who they are playing. That will be a problem.
Brian, Trey Lance last night completed only 13 of 28 passes for 164 yards and took 2 sacks. And I know we're going to talk about the Cowboys down the stretch. Have you changed your mind on Trey Lance, or do you still think it's just like...
No, I think you know where I stand with Trey Lance. There's 2 aspects to what I picked out from the game. One of which, when the game hurried up in the fourth quarter, in terms of they were down, they needed to start moving the ball. They were totally reliant on him throwing it. A lot of the factors that Mitchell was gone off with an injury and looks like he's gone for a period of time. But he wasn't comfortable. You could put it down to the weather, inexperience. Like people keep saying he's a rookie because he only played 3 games last year, so he's really starting off. But he didn't look like he was comfortable, and that's what concerns me when they get to a stage where the games are critical in that fourth quarter. Is he capable of pulling it out? The interception, the crosser where Eddie Jackson came across, like I text Colum at the time, and it was a complete... I mean, they read his eyes. It was so evident he doesn't seem to take away from the read in terms of what was coming across. So that was a bit concerning. From the Bears' perspective, like Colum's right, when you give away 12 penalties in a game, you're on a hiding to nothing. The Bears only gave away 3 penalties in the entirety of the game. So once they couldn't move the ball, the new head coach had them disciplined enough not to be, losing the game, as opposed to, if we're going to get beat, let's get beaten by a better side as opposed to losing the game ourselves. 49ers will say they lost the game themselves. Justin Fields only completed 8 receptions completed in the game. 8 throws, when you look at it like that, he didn't have the greatest of game either, but at the right time. And, there was some defensively for the 49ers, which we wouldn't expect to see, like that touchdown to Pettis where they completely overlapped on the other side and left complete, he was completely uncovered. And the other one as well, like again, 14 points off turnovers. Essentially, the game was given to them. Not given them, with fairness to the Bears, it was a tough game. They did what they had to do, but the 49ers will be ruined. It's a big loss early in the season because the pressure's on there already for Lance. And I was looking at Jimmy G, and like Michael, we're a lockstep on the Jimmy G. Obviously, Colum has his feelings for Trey Lance. Like I was looking at the stats today, 31 of 38 games under Shanahan, Garoppolo's 1. And yeah, he's not good enough to be the starting quarterback. Shanahan is 7-29 when Garoppolo doesn't play. In terms of he's only had 7 wins, Garoppolo not a starting quarterback. But yeah, as this season goes on, if they don't win the games, like everybody has a feeling that 49ers are good enough to go back to the playoffs, potentially go back to the Super Bowl. What's going to happen within the camp? Is there going to be a split at some stage if they don't win these games? Like, I know Seattle aren't up to much. Potentially that's a game next week. Seattle could win. Who knows? And then all of a sudden the pressure ramps up. And then what happens when you hit week 4, week 5? You've called it. I agree with you. Like, is Jimmy G going to come back in because the pressure's going to be too much on Kyle? Or are they just going to say, this is where we're at, and if we don't get materialise in terms of getting to the playoffs, bearing in mind the expectations this team has, it's a tricky one, it's a precarious one. I'm not sure how it's going to play out. They need to win a game, and they need to win quickly and get off that week 1 slide.
Shout out to everyone watching. We're going to get some questions in at the end of the show after we make game picks from Monday Night Football. Shout out to Swagmeister, especially Swagmeister, because he said this guy, I don't know, this came in like 3 hours before the show started. This guy literally knows nothing about football. Dude is such a clown. Not sure if he's talking about me or you, Colum, or Brian there. I'm not sure, but thank you very much, Swagmeister. Fred, Keith, L. De Bruyne, yeah, you got Game Pass, and Munzie as well. Thanks for your questions and comments, folks. We'll put them all on the screen at the end. Keep firing them in, and we'll put them up at the end. Yeah, it was funny because the show I was on last night, or producing last night, your guy Larry Kruger, who I think's like this big beat reporter over there, said that he was convinced that it was mostly on Shanahan. Like, they had what column? The defense was flagged 12 times for 99 yards. I mean, well, sorry, it was the offense for 99 yards, and it was just a situation where obviously the Bears forced 2 big turnovers, and you have to give it to the Bears. They were more disciplined, especially in that second half where they got it done. I think it was sitting in the last quarter, and I just couldn't see a route where Trey Lance was actually going to get the ball down the field and get a touchdown. And I think it's funny now because the Bears now go to Green Bay on Sunday, and we'll talk about the Packers down the stretch, but they've got a shot in the arm of confidence. And the thing that I love, Colin, was I watched Brian's preview back on Friday night, and he literally covered both angles. He was talking about how Bears fans thought they could win and going around it. Now, the game that I thought that was going to be a Steelers-Bengals game, but fair play to the Bears, man.
Yeah, I looked. The Bears fans, they said that they believed in their team, and they were right. I mean, I just think that the Trey Lance stuff, I think it's absolutely insane if they bring Jimmy in. Like, what was the point in giving up what they did? The fact that they didn't play Trey last year, to me, is the bigger issue. You get a rookie, when you take a rookie QB in the first round, you get 5 years of them. You get 4 years on a really cheap deal, 5 years relatively cheap, or cost control, certainly. The whole point is to play them as early as possible. Trey Lance has thrown 400 passes since high school. The idea that you would continue to sit him is ridiculous. What is he going to learn through a process of osmosis? He has to play game time. The 49ers put themselves in this position by bringing him in, by giving up the farm to go and get him, by bringing him in, by then sitting him, by allowing the Jimmy G situation to play out as it did over the course of the summer. They've made this rod for their own back. But to me, you have to ride the Trey Lance train, because otherwise you've given up all this pick, this capital. They've got nothing for the next couple of drafts because of what they gave up for Trey Lance. So, sitting him is eating up into that rookie contract. And again, he's maybe taking reps in training, but he's not throwing meaningful balls. They need to get him game time, and I think they're just going to have to take their licks in terms of the results.
I think the difficulty is that, and you speak to many 49ers fans, they all feel, and they got to the championship game, so they're well within the rights to feel this way, that this team is potentially on the verge of going to a Super Bowl. And when we see rookies get drafted, it's usually by the team that have had really difficult seasons, and they're obviously trying to redevelop. The 49ers, as Colin rightly said, have given away the earth to move up to the third pick to get him. So they're in a precarious situation, because this team is ready to go now, but the quarterback isn't ready to go now. And that's not to say he won't be, but come the end of the season or next season. But right now, they're playing with a quarterback who would be, in my opinion, would be better fit to be playing for a team where his expectations are a lot lessened, potentially a team that could be pushing for the wild card, as opposed to a team that's expected to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, Mark has them going to the Super Bowl. There's people out there, there's many picked that the 49ers been in the Super Bowl, but look, it's week 1. It's overreaction Monday, so I'm conscious of that as well. Like, let's not get too high and too low on teams, because next weekend, we've seen before, things quickly change in this league. But I've had many 49ers fans onto me today, and they're very frustrated with the situation. They have been for the past few months.
How many of your mates are 49ers fans? Many 49ers fans?
5.
Jesus, right. Okay,
Showing their age, going back to the Jerry Rice days.
Are, man? Right, let's look at the second game in this first segment of the show and of the broadcast and of the podcast. Thanks for everyone listening in. Cleveland Browns get the win against the Panthers 26-24. One thing that stood out for me, Colum, was, is there one team you wanted to see win more than the Browns this weekend? Fair play to them, they won the game. Dominant on the run with Hunt and Chubb. But I really liked Baker Mayfield. I know he lost the game, but you could see the fight in him. You could see how much he wanted it, and he almost got there. I think it was a 75-yard touchdown pass. Was it Robbie Anderson? If he keeps playing like that, and if he does try and improve and get back to where he was prior to his injury issues, who knows what could happen in Carolina, but it's a disappointing start for them.
Yeah, and I think a disappointing start for him. We talked on Friday's show about the stats Baldy had about when he had played Texas Tech and the beatdown he'd put on them. But it looked like he was almost trying too hard early on, that he was so kind of intent on beating them up that he wasn't properly focused on what was kind of going on around him. In the end, it feels a bit like the Matt Rule era for the Panthers. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. They get close, but ultimately they are undone. And this is the reason that you draft a kicker. I suppose the Browns, when they took him, they had at that point maybe intentions of kind of go on a deep playoff run. I'm sure they do, but they would have seen last year with the Bengals the benefits of sorting out a kicker and knowing what you have. For the Panthers, look, we know when Christian McCaffrey is fit, he's such a dynamic runner. We know that Robbie Anderson is super talented. You would have liked to see a little bit more from DJ Moore, I feel. But the Panthers under Matt Rule, we're talking about the 49ers needing to start winning. The Panthers under Matt Rule really need to start winning.
I have a slightly different slant on this one. So, I felt the Browns kind of built a bit. They kind of dug their own hole in this game. Baker was non-existent in the first half. He threw an interception. The Browns had the ball for 38 minutes of the 60 in this game. They were averaging 6 yards a run between Chubb and Hunt. But in the red zone, Jacoby Brissett was only able to get into the end zone once, 1 out of 4. So I felt they left the Panthers hanging around. And by halftime, I felt that game was done and dusted. Yeah, the Panthers came back well. And the field goal, in fairness, for a rookie, Cade York to come on and kick a magnificent field goal. They said he was hitting from 68 before the game in the lead up. So he had another 10 yards, I think, on the field goal when it went over. But people today will look at this game and go, oh, that was a really tight game. But if you looked at the first half and early into the third quarter, it was so one-sided. It was unbelievable. And I went with the Browns because I felt that Chubb and Hunt combined as a unit, running back would be the difference against McCaffrey. McCaffrey's a special talent. I just felt that the Browns would have enough in the running game. Essentially, that's just about how they got over the line. And for Brissett, didn't do a lot game management, didn't turn the ball over, and he had some nice throws on the last try. But I think we're all in lockstep and unison in this. The Browns will win games because of the defense more so than the offense, in my opinion, to hang around this division. Because ultimately, Jacoby Brissett won't be able to get the games done in the bigger games. They nearly lost the game against a struggling Panthers side in the end. So. Look, they'll be thankful that they probably have no disrespect to Jets fans. They're home to the Jets this weekend, and they could be 2-0 come the weekend, and people will be saying the Browns are well in with a hunt. But I think further down the line they're going to struggle.
Watching tape of Baker in 2019-2020 before he got, that long-term injury and almost lost himself. I think in 2020 he had a completion percentage of when he was passing of around 62.8%. He wasn't that far off it yesterday. I liked him in the second half. I feel like he's got that confidence back almost. So let's see what happens over the next few weeks. If he can try and get back to where he was, and if Christian McCaffrey obviously can continue on the run, then they've got some sort of project there in Carolina. I just don't know what it is yet, but he'll be gutted about that yesterday. Just before we round up the segments, so just read out some comments here in terms of the games that we've talked about. Kenneth saying the Kickers had the yips this week. The Panthers have flattered to the sea for many years. Don't think Baker will improve them that much. And L. De Bruyne saying the 49ers interior O-line was horrible. Mike was just on the right side or coming back from injury. So loads of comments. We'll get the rest of them out at the end of the show. There is a comment there from Munsey Colum saying, is that Simon out of the in-betweeners in the Broncos jumper? Wow, brilliant. Fantastic. Okay, that's the end of this segment. If you're listening to the podcast, you can check out all the other segments on the Irish NFL Show podcast channel. Okay, the next game that we're going to look at from the weekend is what was quite frankly a fantastic game between the Saints and the Falcons. Now, if I'm correct, well, a few of us have picked the Saints. Colin, did you pick the Saints to win the NFC South, or was it just me? I think Brian had the Bucks, didn't he? So did you pick the Saints?
No, I was on the Bucks. I have some concerns over their head coach, but they were up against a Falcons team that just can't seem to hang on to leads. It doesn't seem
Were you
to
surprised
matter.
though at how well they played, Colin? They got 26 points on the board, and a lot of people thought, including like guys like D. Orlando in Atlanta, they thought that they were really going to struggle this season. And yes, they lost the game, but there was definitely positive there yesterday.
Yeah, no, they were certainly feistier than maybe we expected them to be, but ultimately, you can only have moral victories so many times. Jameis came alive. Like the first three quarters for the Saints, he was doing nothing. He had 56 yards through the first three quarters, and then in the fourth quarter he comes alive, 13 of 16 for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. Talk about turning it on in the fourth quarter. Of course, if Jameis was as good on the field as his interviews pre and post game, he'd probably be the most entertaining quarterback in the league. There would be much tougher tests ahead for the Saints. They need Jameis to, kind of be fourth quarter Jameis for, 3, if not 4 quarters, certainly if they're to really, really compete. But they got the victory in a divisional matchup. It highlights again, and you look at the divisional matchups, we're going to come to the AFC North next. But look, these teams don't like each other. The fans don't like each other, and that adds certainly to the rivalry and to the sense of occasion.
Brian, Taysom Hill had some interesting plays last night, over 80 yards on the day, and he had that touchdown as well. The Saints, I mean, Colum's talked about Jameis Winston there, but he hasn't thrown a pick yet, and we're leaving week one. The train is leaving the station, so it has to be an improvement, yeah.
Yeah, but if you looked at the 5 games in which he played last year, he became a little bit more conservative than what we saw in Tampa, and I don't think he threw many interceptions last year. Taysom Hill was due to play tight end yesterday, and he was quickly back in that old role of trying to do a bit of everything, and he had that magnificent run early on in the game. Then he followed it up with the touchdown. But after that, as Colin rightly said, they did nothing for 3 quarters. And on Friday night, I said on the show that I was watching an interview with the Pease, the defensive coordinator of the Falcons, and he said everybody's going to be shocked by how good our defense is this season. And for 3 quarters, I was like, okay, fair enough. I know it's week 1. And then it was as if they were all completely gassed in the 4th quarter. I know we're playing in the dome and it's warm, but like, a part of me was like, they couldn't cover anybody in the 4th quarter. Like they were lockstep, they were so tight on all the receivers. Michael Thomas, Olave, none of the guys were getting any separation in the first 3 quarters. And then in the 4th quarter, they come alive. And Michael Thomas, I mean, he's kind of a bit of a forgotten man because he's had that difficult time between the operation that the Saints wanted him to have earlier that previous off-season. He missed it. He essentially was gone for last season. Comes back and he still shows the player he is in terms of catching those two great touchdowns, one of which he pulled it in. It wasn't a fantastic throw from Jameis. He was, it was more the catch from Thomas more so than the throw. But the Falcons still find ways. It's that feeling of you move on from a previous head coach and things change and the dynamic of the team change. But even under Arthur Smith, they just find ways to lose games. And like at no stage yesterday, going into the 4th, did anybody think it was no more than a Falcons win. And like you can see. Like it's like this for the Saints now. They play the Bucs this weekend, and that's a difficult game itself. But if they had lost that game going into the Bucs game, the pressure would have been immense immediately. Not to fall 2 games behind in the division, and all of a sudden they've won, and they're going to be cock a hoop going into this weekend. Where the Falcons now have to go into the Rams, who are, they'll have had 10 days to recover from the defeat against a stinging defeat against the Bills. So you kind of feel for them already.
Yeah, Atlanta has blown 3 15-plus point leads since 2020. The rest of the league has blown 2 15-plus point leads combined. Wow. Let's leave that there. I mean, let's see what happens next week. Steelers, Bengals, Colum. Part of me wants to say what a game. The other part of me wants to talk about the first half from Joe Burrow. the other part of me wants to talk about the amount of points that the Steelers defense helped put up, in the sense of not even having to try and score. But Mitchell Trubisky on the day had one passing touchdown. There was no rushing touchdowns for the Steelers. It looks like TJ Watt could be out for the season. We don't know what's happening there yet. The Steelers defense was like a team possessed, and even on Friday's broadcast I was sitting thinking it's going to be tight. I didn't think that the Steelers would get the win, but Jesus, they played well to get it, albeit Joe Burrow in the first half was atrocious. Do you know the last quarterback in the league to throw 4 interceptions in the first half of a game?
Oh, the guy with the Bills, was it Nathan Peter? Was it
Josh Allen against the Jets 2 years ago?
Oh, I thought it was the backup. Wow, there you go.
So he's in good company. Yeah, he's all right.
Look, sometimes it can happen, and you'd be very surprised if something like that was to happen again. But they were awful yesterday in the first half, and Burrow has to take his share of the blame. Like some of the picks, the pick six that he threw. I mean, we criticized, I suppose, Lance earlier for not seeing the safety. Burrow did exactly the same on a couple of occasions yesterday, and he took a huge number of sacks again, sacked 7 times, forced fumble, and yet they could and probably should have won the game. So it's a really strange one. It almost feels a little bit like a Pyrrhic victory for the Steelers, because, as I said, they lose TJ, which is a huge loss for them, and they were really unable to do anything on offense. The offense scored 16 points in 13 possessions. That's going to be tough sledding for the rest of the season if they can't improve. Look, Marvelous Mike ensures that they'll always be super competitive. But if this game highlights something else that's really important, it is on special teams. And they lost their long snapper in the fourth quarter to an injury, and that probably cost them the victory.
Colum calls it Magical Mike. Well, I don't know what I want to call Zach Taylor, because we touched on his game management in the Super Bowl towards the end and how he called it, and it was difficult. And yesterday again, there was some strange situations in games. Like they had 32 first downs in the whole game. In its entirety, the Bengals compared to the Steelers had 13. Burrow threw for 53 times. Critical downs in the game, which were third down and 6, third down and 5s, and they're not bringing in Joe Mixon, who people think he's underrated. Maybe the Bengals think he's underrated. For me, he's really a really strong player in that team, and they bring in Perrine. And at time and time again, he did it in the Super Bowl on that fourth down critical play early in the game. He goes to Perrine as opposed to Joe Mixon, who is like one of the best running backs in the league, in my opinion. And Zach Taylor did that time and time again yesterday. There was big plays, big decisions, and then for me, he got a lot of them wrong. It was very strange. In the end, it was a bit of a fiasco, to be honest. Like the Bengals easily could have won; they should have won. The one
play at the end, Brian, was shocking. Like the play clock and the decision that Zach Taylor made was atrocious.
He punted with 20 seconds to go when he had an opportunity to drain the clock by 17 seconds, and he didn't do that either, which was weird. Like I'm surprised it wasn't called out in the commentary. It was kind of like as if like, we'll give the Bengals a pass here and give the head coach a pass because he was in the Super Bowl. That was strange. Thought the officiating was a bit strange. I thought his guys upstairs didn't help him out either with 2 minutes and 10 seconds to go, because I felt Chase had gone over the line in terms of it looked like he got in for a touchdown. It was called at the 1 yard line. In the end, they didn't even score off that drive. They went four out. That was a disaster as well. I mean, surely someone should be buzzing down, telling them to challenge. It wasn't underneath the 2 minutes, so it couldn't be reviewed by the officiating. He had timeouts. Someone in the box should be giving him the nudge to challenge that. So that was strange. And I think the reason for that was because they rushed up quickly to get a play off before the 2 minute warning, as opposed to having someone in his ears say, you need to get that play looked at. I thought they managed the game wrong. And then on the other side, you've got one of the best game management head coaches in the league, Mike Tomlin. Whilst he mightn't have the players at his disposal, I certainly don't think Mitchell Trubisky is going to be the answer in the long run, because for me yesterday, I didn't think he did enough. They got away with it, in my opinion. The Bengals found ways to lose the game as opposed to the Steelers winning.
Colum, Mike Tomlin came out before yesterday's game and said that Mr. Trubisky is his quarterback for the season. It's an interesting way to go. I don't believe Kenny Pickett's the answer either, so it's going to be an intriguing year in Pittsburgh. Just before I put my next sort of thoughts in about the Steelers defense, there are a few comments. Yeah, obviously Fitzgerald is earning his bag. Fred, Colum and Brian and the Giants. We'll talk about the Giants at some point, and we'll talk about Mike Vrabel at some point as well. Pure sideline reviewing that play. Coach has to challenge it. I completely agree. Colum. Steelers defense, 7 sacks, 4 interceptions, 1 fumble recovered, 1 touchdown, 1 turnover and downs, 1 blocked extra point. Is that, in your opinion, the best defense in football?
Well, yesterday it was, but on another day things can go differently. You have to see. They're super competitive, and we knew coming into the game that they would be. We talked about the fact that their camps are kind of legendary in terms of being aggressive. So we knew that they would be up for it. Just thought that Burrow had been the better QB, but they, this is the thing. As you get more and more on tape, people learn your traits, all that sort of stuff. They respond. Then it's how you respond. I think both sides will probably come away from it thinking, there's so much more we need to do, and there's so much more that we can do. But you would have to say, as strong as their defense was yesterday, if TJ Watt is out for the entirety of the season, that is a huge loss. He is an absolute game wrecker. I mean, his ability to just get to QBs and cause havoc and create double teams, to lose that, there's nobody there who can replace him.
Colum is continuously praising Mike Tomlin throughout the course of this show over the past few months, and rightly so. But the one thing Tomlin always does, he always has his team ready for week 1. He saw it last year when they went into Buffalo and knocked the Bills off. And there's other coaches in the league, and I know we're going to come to the Packers for example, there's other coaches in the league that don't seem to be able to get the team ready for week 1. They get better as the season goes on. Packers got blown out last year in week 1. You could argue they got blown out yesterday, whereas Steelers seem to always be ready for week 1. Has them well prepared, both offensively and defensively. Not to do it in silly on offense, and defensively will help win the game. So I wouldn't go as far as to say they're the best defense in the league, because I think as the season progresses, we'll probably see other teams take advantage of things that the Bengals didn't yesterday.
Okay, that is the end of the segment, folks. If you want to listen into the other segments on the podcast network, just go back to the homepage and find the next segment. Thank you very much for listening. Okay, thank you. Right, for me yesterday, the most enjoyable game that I found to watch wasn't the most high-scoring game. I did enjoy that Lions-Eagles game, Colum, but Jesus, that Chargers-Raiders game was like a heavyweight sort of clash, wasn't it? Khalil Mack had 3 sacks, Justin Herbert 279 yards, 3 touchdowns. His movement was phenomenal, and the Chargers get the win. I know we'll talk about what on it. Well, you know what, I'll say it now. I don't want this game on Thursday night to be on this Thursday night. Can we keep this game for like 6 weeks, please, and have the team have both teams ready to go? I can't wait. To be fair, it's gonna be a great game. But the Chargers put a marker down, and the Raiders look good on offense as well. The AFC West is going to be a shootout all year, Colin.
Yeah, well, you saw, I think, good and bad from both teams. Very good and very bad. Devonta Adams, just looked like his old self. But the issue is that Derek Carr is not Aaron Rodgers, and Derek Carr is in a division with other incredible QBs. And to me, I suppose the end of the first half kind of highlighted maybe the differences in the two QBs, and ultimately what the difference in the game. The Carr was trying to throw to Waller, and he underthrew it. And now whether that was arm strength or whether he just miscalculated, but the Chargers got the ball, and 2 plays later, Herbert throws an absolute incredible ball, just zips it in, and it was like he wasn't even trying, and yet he zipped it in. and the Chargers had the touchdown, and that, I suppose, is the difference. It was a good catch from Carter, but Herbert just put it on him. For the Chargers, though, they didn't play, the four, I suppose, 4 complete quarters, but again, it's week 1. Brian's friend was making some interesting decisions once again. But I suppose the Chargers ultimately get a win in a division game. We talked earlier about the other kind of division games, how tough division games are. You also saw the fact that both LA teams, and obviously the Rams overcame it last year to win a Super Bowl, but both of them having to go to silent counts in their home stadium on week 1 is less than ideal.
Brian, the relationship between Derek Carr and Davante Adams got off to a decent start. It wasn't strong enough for them to get the win. I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, I'm starting to think it's going to be interesting to watch this game tonight, Brian, in terms of where we can place the Broncos in this division out of the other 3 teams that have played this weekend already. What was your thoughts on watching the Raiders? Because you were I'm sure you still remain very high up on them as well. And I guess the bad thing for them yesterday is they've lost a divisional game, but there's still another 16 to claw back.
I felt, the game came down to quarterbacks. Like, you look at the quarterbacks. Look, we expected a big high scoring game. It didn't materialize like that. Like, the Raiders will go away and we say we held the Chargers 24 points and we don't win the game. If they, come Friday, Saturday, you think that you're going to hold them 24 points, bear in mind how good Herbert is. And they hold Williams to make their main wide receiver, who signed a big contract in December for something over 22 to 30 yards, something like that, and he doesn't score a touchdown. He's non-existent for large parts of the game. You'd expect them to have enough based on the players that they have offensively. But Derek Carr didn't play well yesterday. You're right, he's not at the level of Rodgers, but you still expect him, to have enough yesterday, I would have thought, to put numbers up on the Chargers. On Chargers defense, and you look at stats, they look high, but the reality is he didn't do a lot in the first half, and he turned the ball over 3 times, and some of the decision making was quite poor. He held onto the ball for me too long in the pocket, but he could have got it away in terms of just taking an incomplete pass. And the interception in particular down when he tried to get Renfro when he was double coverage was madness. Herbert just made the right decision at the right time, and then still with 3 minutes 38 to go in the game, they're down by 5, having gone for the 2 points, which again was a disaster because the Chargers were penalised. They got up to the 1 yard line for a 2-point conversion. They got penalised and go back 5 yards. Like, that in itself was a disaster. So they end up 5 points down as opposed to getting it within a field goal. Get the ball with 3.5 to go to win the game. I mean, on Friday, certainly probably thought, if we have the ball last, the likelihood we will win the game. It didn't happen for them. Look, there's a lot of bigger games to go. They've got a divisional game out of the way. It hasn't gone their way, but they will now expect other teams in the division to take each other off as the weeks go on. Like, we're going to see this week, one of them is going to be back to 1-1, whether it's the Chiefs or the Chargers come Thursday, Friday morning. So they'll hope to rebound this weekend.
Can't wait to talk about that. I feel like we'd almost need to start showing Wednesday night this week to get through that fully. Maybe we will. Who knows? Watch this space. We probably won't. Colum, the big thing for me, because we were talking about the impact of Jesse Jackson on Friday's broadcast and he wasn't available, but you've seen someone like Bryce Callahan make that big interception. I think it was in the 4th quarter to sort of turn the game almost. It does seem to me that the Chargers, if you compare them, I know it's been one game, but if you compare the situation in terms of where they are now to where they were last year, those key additions in the offseason, I think, are going to make the X factor down the stretch, because if you have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa combining for 4.5 sacks yesterday against this Raiders team, what could they do against Mahomes on Thursday night? I mean, it's gonna be box office TV, isn't it? And here, fair play to Amazon, because nobody realises this in Ireland and the UK. If you're watching this game on Sky on Thursday night, we're all going to be ahead of the US ones, watching it like by a minute, so we're going to see everything first and be tweeting everything first. But can't wait. I think that's a game to stay up for on Thursday night, Colum, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it should be wonderfully entertaining. The only thing you'd say, I suppose, is the Chargers' issue has been around consistency, right? The Chargers have shown over the past couple of years they can beat anyone they are not the Broncos against the Chiefs. They've beaten the Chiefs. They've come from behind to beat the Chiefs at times. But their issue has been that over the course of the season, teams have figured out a weakness that they've had last year. You could run all over them. They just couldn't stop the run. So it's the consistency and, I suppose, keeping players fit that has been an issue for them. Their roster is unbelievable if they can stay healthy. But if they're going into Thursday, obviously without JC Jackson, that becomes another issue. When you have two pass rushers of the caliber of Mack and Bosa, that's going to make life difficult for everyone. But, you know, we know that the Raiders, one of their biggest issues is the O-line. The Chiefs O-line should provide a sterner test, you would have to say. So, but it has the makings of a classic. And there are two sides who are not afraid to go for it.
Brian, do you want to give away your pick now for Thursday night, or do you want to wait?
No, I'll give it a few days. Thanks, Michael.
Look forward to that. That's the biggest game of the year on Thursday night this week. Bring it on. It's going to be a late night. Can Michael survive on another night of 3 hours sleep? Find out tonight. Okay. It's time to talk about this. Fred actually commented about Ronaldo and comparing him to the way that Rodgers stropped yesterday. Colum, Vikings 23-7 victors over the Packers. I didn't think it would be close, and I think it shows last night that there are considerable issues in Green Bay, especially in my opinion, on the wide receiver core and the weapons that Aaron Rodgers has available to him. When Aaron Andrews comes out and says that Aaron Rodgers describes Davante Adams as his safety net, that's concerning. But also, anybody outside of this broadcast I've spoken to, they're all like, oh well, the Packers will be grand next week because they're playing the Bears. But I'm thinking like 4 or 5 months down the stretch, not even like 3 months down the stretch, when he gets to the playoffs, they're not going to win with this team, are they? I mean, maybe I'm losing my mind here, but Aaron Rodgers yesterday was not completing passes to what he could do previously. And I think to sit here and say that, oh well, he hasn't got Davante Adams, he hasn't got, like, it's a bit of a cop out when you've got like Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, you've got Aaron Jones you can hand it off to. I just think it's ridiculous. And I think Minnesota, the combination of that hybrid Rams offense with Phillips and O'Connell and Justin Jefferson played them off the park, and it could have been a cricket score if they wanted it to be. Personally, what do you think?
Well, look, the Packers have been here before. This time last year, they were absolutely awful against the Saints. There were some bad drops yesterday, I mean, that one particularly, I think, was Watson let it through his hands and he was wide open. So, look, it can take time for wide receivers to, especially that offensive game plan, to come in. Yesterday, they were second best all over the field, and Rodgers didn't help himself. Like that stupid thing where he tried to body check his former teammate, and like he was like a baby gazelle trying to get back up off the ground. The Vikings took advantage of the fact that the Packers played zone. And they just lined Jefferson up kind of all over the place. They used a huge number of crossing routes, which caused all sorts of confusion for the Packers. Now, again, the Packers will respond. You would expect them to get better. I don't think you overreact to it, but I expected the Vikings to be really good. I think that the culture there last year was all wrong. I think we really saw it become a toxic place. That changed under Kevin O'Connell. There'll be much tougher tests to come. But to start your, I suppose, head coaching career off with a thumping victory against your biggest rivals in your home stadium, with your star player, having a kind of a Randy Moss-esque game, is about as good as it gets. But there is a long season to go. I'd like to see the Vikes make the playoffs. We talked to Kevin O'Connell, seems very smart. Let's see what happens.
Brian, you thought the Vikings were going to lose the game, but more so Kirk Cousins. Did Kirk Cousins do anything for you yesterday to think he may have improved his consistency, or he might work better in this offense? genuine question. Was there anything you seen from the Vikings yesterday where you thought they have a chance at this division?
I thought their pass rush. Sorry, I know it's a core question, Kirk Cousins related question. I'll come back to it. But we didn't touch on how erratic the Packers' offensive line was. That Darius Smith and Hunter were dominant throughout the course of the game. You know, they got to Rodgers a number of times, and it'll go down as more the fact that the Packers' offense was inconsistent because of the wide receivers and there's some bad drops. But throughout the game, Rodgers had very little time, and even when he did get out of pocket, he was quickly. If it was a secondary a linebacker coming in or a safety coming up, he just didn't get the time. Another part which hasn't really been recognised today, hasn't been called out that much, is the score is very reflective of how the game was, which essentially it was quite a dominant win for the Vikings. But at 7-0, there's a goal line stand on the 1 yard line by this Vikings defence, and if that goes in, I'm not saying it would have changed the game in terms of the scoreline, but it could have been a bit of a shift, and you wouldn't know. But Rodgers came out after the game and said these receivers, and in fairness, he wasn't as forceful as he was previously. He was a bit more. Actually, I was a bit more encouraged by how he dealt with it after the game, because he got pillared with questions around how these wide receivers just didn't step up to the mark. But he said, "Look, we've been here before. Some of them will learn. Some of them will get better." From a Vikings standpoint, I think as the years go on, we're starting to realize how good a player Jefferson had, like 2 touchdowns, 150 yards in the first half, and look, he's up there in terms of the top 5, top 6 receivers in the league. But I still feel, general consensus, he's not at the top level. But what we saw from yesterday was a player that on his day he can't be covered. Colum's right, he goes on. We've seen where teams have stuck on him and had him fall across the field, and it still doesn't work because he's so explosive. Cousins got a lot of time yesterday, I felt. Offensive line did really well for him, but again, this is the thing we've always discussed with Kirk Cousins. He'll play really well one week. You think he's going in the right direction. The following week he'll have a clanger, like to go into Philly on Monday Night Football next week. So it'll be interesting to see how he manages that game, because opening day win for the Eagles, week 2 at home on a Monday night, the crowd will be well up for it, and it'll be interesting to see how he manages that game as opposed to a home game yesterday against the Packers team that were inconsistent.
Indeedy. That is the end of this segment. I feel like we could sit here and talk for the Vikings for ages, but we've got a broadcast outside Tottenham in 3 weeks, and we'll hopefully talk a bit more about the Vikes then. A lot of Vikings fans in Ireland and the UK, I'd say, very excited about that last night. Packers have got the Bears next week, so an all NFC North matchup, and the division's shaping up to be something good. I mean, I know I'll probably talk about the Eagles Lions in a bit. Who knows what's going on with the Lions as well. It's all trending in the right direction. That is the end of this segment. If you want to listen to any other segments on the podcast, please do so. Please like, share, subscribe. Please give us a review. It really, really, really means a lot. Thank you. Okay, our final segment tonight, we are going to talk about the Giants' second half comeback to, I would say, stun is, I'm reading the executive producer's notes here, to stun the Titans. I would say that's a stunner. Colum, I would go as far as saying, and I think it's a great result for the Giants, and I hold my hands up about Saquon as well, because I think I was giving him grief the other day. This is unacceptable for Mike Vrabel. Yeah, I mean, this is shocking stuff. I'd say he hasn't slept, because this is for this team that were number 1 in the AFC at the end of the regular season last year. This is an unacceptable start for a Tennessee fan base that, quite frankly, were on edge coming into this season. But I mean, give every credit to the Giants. They went for it. They had a bit of crack. They've done it. But has this result, do you think, impacted Mike Vrabel at all, or is it way too early to say so at the minute?
It's way too early. Look, I think the Giants Vrabel yesterday. I mean, what we've always given Vrabel credit for is that he gets his team to respond. The Giants were 13 down at halftime. We talked about it with the Bears earlier. It would have been very easy to drop the heads. Nobody gave them a prayer going into Tennessee, and they came out and they had a really solid performance. I mean, basically, Brian Daboll needs we saw Tyreek Hill say that Mike McDaniels needs a wheelbarrow for his cojones. Well, no, I think Brian Daboll needs a bigger one to go for 2. And the way his players responded to him, and the fact that he wasn't afraid to go over to Daniel Jones when he threw that awful pick and, call him out in it, not lose the head, but just say that's kind of unacceptable. So to me, this is the beauty of the NFL, right? This is why people talk about the 0-16 Lions and the 0-16 Browns in such a way, because that's such a rarity. Like, most teams in the NFL will win through at least 3 or 4 games, and I didn't expect Saquon to have the sort of game that he had. He looked really good yesterday. Best he's looked in a couple of years. The Saquon we saw last year looked like a shadow of his former self, but they look rejuvenated, re-energized. They'll be tougher games ahead, as it turns out. Complacency, it's that is the ability to keep players pushing and pushing is something that is it's really difficult to do. And once you lose momentum in this league, it's so difficult to get it back. But being aggressive is what Daboll does, and it paid dividends yesterday. Really, really good piece from Peter King. If people out there, viewers or listeners, definitely worth checking that piece out.
Brian is talking to Simon Clancy earlier on this afternoon, and he said to me, when the Giants are winning the NFC East and the NFC is better off for it. I have to agree with that.
Yeah, well, look, we spoke, when we were doing our divisional preview, and we were fortunate, we spoke to the GM during the summer, and we were all we took away from that you could sense the changes were taking place, and it'd be a slowly gradual thing, and I think that's still to come. But between him and the head coach, they seem to be in lockstep together. It was great to see after the game Barkley giving the game balls to the boat, and bearing in mind the difficulty Barkley's had over the past few years. You would think when you go for 18, 164 yards and a touchdown, you score the winning, the game-winning score, you think he'd be the one getting the match ball. But it shows the kind of team togetherness that's there already, and to come back from 13-0 down against the Titans team that rightly said, like on Friday, Mark said, let's not get away from this game. It's a team that won 4 games last year, going in to the team that was the number 1 seed, and to hold Derrick Henry, who arguably is the best running back in the league, to 82 yards, with a defense that was missing their two marquee pass rushers, was in itself really good. And overall, everybody collectively played really well. The Giants have been stoned by some late field goals over the years, and every Giants fan last night, I text Colum saying, "Here we go again," because it just has that deja vu feeling. The Eagles did it with a 61-yarder, Graham Gano did it with a 63-yarder. So to see it go right, sometimes new head coaches just need a bit of luck, and he's ballsy. He said it after the game, "I'm here to win. Like, I want to win games. I don't want to be going into overtime. I'm going to be aggressive, and if anybody doesn't like it, well, then they go play somewhere else." So it's great to see that's there. And it's mad how quickly in NFL the narrative changes, because at one stage you're thinking, oh, they've come close and they'll lose and it'll be the same old Giants, but thankfully they got over the line. I do agree with you on the Titans angle, Michael. As good as pleased as I am to see my team win the game, if I was a Titans fan, I'd be disgusted. They're 13-0 up. They had opportunities to pull away and they didn't do it. Okay, fine, the Giants defense stepped up, but for a team that's supposed to be, deemed to be a serious contender, to be losing to a team that's only had 4 wins, and once it's under new head coach and GM, it's not acceptable. And, Tannehill, look, my feelings on Tannehill, he's not the marquee quarterback that needs to be there, and ultimately that's what's going to cost them in the long run. Thought he was okay yesterday, but the Giants found a way to keep him in check for large parts of the game.
One other thing that Clancy said to me, or made me aware of, was the Giants' schedule. They've got the Panthers next week, the Cowboys the week after, the Bears the week after, and then they go to London. They could be 4-0 the time they go to London, because some of the... Well, I don't know about the Panthers. Talk about that on Friday.
Push the brakes. Hit the brakes there, Michael. What I've learned in this game, things change very quickly, so... Yeah, people now will say the Giants have the Panthers on Sunday, they just lost, but... Panthers easily could have won yesterday, and there'd be a different feel going into the game. So,
Baker. Let's see what happens, and let's keep that for Friday and see the crack. I'm sure we'll have enough to talk about on Thursday as well. There was a lot of grief about this game, Colum, the Bucks against the Cowboys. Maybe it shows you how far down the rabbit hole I am. I actually enjoyed this game last night. Am I insane? I was sitting, chilled out. Loved I think it was 4 or 5 times Brady got off to Julio. There was one big play. Lenny Fournette looks really fresh. Still don't know. Maybe he's just getting old. He looked completely different with his interview at the end of the game. Anyway, I was up to about 20-5 last night. This is why I'm looking like this at the minute with the L'Oreal, etc. They get the job done 19-3, but the big story obviously is Dak Prescott injured. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. There was no offense for the Cowboys at all last night, apart from I think Ezekiel Elliott had like 40 or 50 yards max. And Colum, that goes down to the GM. And who is the GM in Dallas? He looked very unhappy last night. They have nobody else but themselves to blame, have they? Because Julio Jones could have been on the other. He could have been on the other sideline last night, and Jerry hasn't bothered his hole.
Yeah, I said it on Friday night. Jerry is the biggest issue in Dallas. I mean, that goes back, but Jerry's a multi-billionaire and nobody in Dallas can call him on it. Jerry gets to do whatever Jerry wants to do. I didn't think the Bucs were at all impressive on offense, but they didn't need to be, because the Cowboys were so pedestrian. That comes back to the issues that they had on the line prior to the game, but then you lose the guy on the opening drive. So essentially kind of, probably almost 4/5 of your line is not what you were hoping it would be for week one. And that's a huge issue. And then you lose the starting QB. I really don't know where the Cowboys go from here, because you just look at the roster and it's not like there's even when they get the O-line guys back, you look at the wide receivers and CD is obviously very talented, but is CD the real kind of monstrous kind of WR1 that you want? I don't know if he is. Low diminishing returns with Zeke. I said it before. This Bucs team, double-digit wins. This Cowboys team are in all sorts of trouble.
Brian, I was surprised at how the Cowboys played last night. I know there's a lot of talk around them, but I did think they would find a way to at least get a score on the board. I was shocked watching it. Cooper Rush now, as it stands, as a quarterback. Lenny Fournette for the Bucs had over 100 yards rushing the night. Brady still didn't get a lot done. Micah Parsons, I think, from my coffee-filled evening memory, had 2 sacks. Jimmy G, Dallas, what would it take?
I don't think Jimmy G would be the answer. I think if we're going to get into a quarterback speculation, I think they'd be more inclined to try to get Huntley from the Ravens. Potentially, he'd be more of a better fit for that offense. He's more similar.
Would they let him go at the minute with the whole thing about Lamar, do you think? That's
the $1 million question. But what would be the right price to draw out a backup quarterback? He has the same kind of skill sets, certainly to Dak more so than Jimmy G. Michael, when we finished the show on Friday night and we were previewing this game, I finished by saying the storyline in this game will not be about Brady. It'll be about how the Cowboys offense can't get anything going because their offensive line is so sporadic and they've got so many injuries. They lost McLaurin early in the game, which didn't help. Dak 14 and 29, and Colum's right with the Zeke thing. It's a disaster, and they've got a great running back there. They just won't utilise because they feel that they have to play Zeke. Pollard had 2 receptions for 14 yards in the game, and then the indiscipline that we saw in the playoff game, which was a real factor as to why they lost the 49ers game, would have been one of the issues that they needed to resolve over the summer, and they had double-digit penalties throughout the course of the game. It was a comfortable night for Brady. He had 9 incomplete passes throughout the course of the game. Yeah, he didn't do anything magic. Jerry Jones came out after the game and said, it's a very disappointing night, but ultimately it's a very surprising night for the team. I mean, what team is he expecting? And I really don't want to speak about Jerry Jones because I think most Cowboys fans are frustrated with his situation. I'd rather talk about Julio Jones because he had 67 yards reception. Okay, he had the big bomb from Brady and he had 17 yards and he touched on it earlier. He looked like the old Julio Jones. He looks like he's refreshed and ready to go, and he's got an opportunity to potentially be in a team that could be in the playoffs. Who knows, might go to the Super Bowl. Cowboys didn't even get into the red zone once. The offense was non-existent, even with Dak. Now they're in a precarious situation. Like if you're a Cowboys fan and they don't go out and trade for a quarterback, whoever it is, whether it's Jimmy G or Huntley or maybe there's someone else that we're not picking up on. If they don't do that and he's gone for 8 weeks, are they essentially saying the season's over? Like, okay, they might win a couple of games. Cooper Rush won a game last year against the Vikings, but let's be honest, I think most Cowboys fans would say he's not the answer.
I think that would be nuts in their division and in their conference. That would be insane to do that. I mean, I understand why there's a viewpoint there. Can I just say one thing?
To stick with Cooper Rush?
No, to have the viewpoint that your season's over. I think that would be insane.
No, I'm not suggesting that, but like the Cowboys fans will expect a reaction now. They will expect a trade. Like essentially, week 8 or 8 weeks brings them up. Let's be fair. We know what the hell it is. When they say week 6 to 8, it could be 9 to 10. So what's that bring up? Brings up to November. If you're not
October, yeah, just start in November.
So they play the Bengals this week. Then they have another difficult. I think they play. Oh, sorry, they play us then week 3. Like that's it's in the NFC East game. You never know with these games. Week 4 they have the Commanders. They've got some difficult games coming up.
Can I just say, because I do want to talk about the Patriots game just between all of us, because I know Mark's not here, and then we'll look at a few other ones and we'll get out of here. Just a very, very quick point. I'm sure somebody will jump in here. Tampa weren't that impressive. Like, they weren't that impressive at all. Like, Tom Brady had 212 yards for 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Kirk Cousins had better stats yesterday. Granted, different game, etc. Lenny was great. Let's see what they're like over the next few weeks.
I thought defensively they were very good. I thought like they had some.
Yeah, sorry, I meant their offense. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. It was just the game was very stop-start, but I enjoyed watching it. I mean, maybe I'm just a complete freak. I don't know, lads. To be honest with you, talking about freaks, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel. Colum, let's start off with an unbiased, positive spin in this game to make sure that no Patriots fans feel that we are picking on them. I listened back to my analysis in the AFC East preview this evening, and I have to say I feel like I was very, very balanced at the Patriots. I do feel there's issues there, and it was very clear last night. I think we'd all love to see, obviously, seeing those teams like the Giants come back up, getting some wins. I think everyone would like to see the Patriots do well in that division and challenge Miami and challenge Buffalo. But I mean, they struggled last night in Miami. I don't think that'll be unfair to say, would it? And Mac Jones at the minute has now got like an injury issue. It's going to be intriguing to see where they go from here.
Well, like they always struggle in Miami, so it shouldn't be that big a surprise that they struggled yesterday. And what it really seemed to be were the drives that kind of just stalled out. And yeah, I do think that the lack of an offensive coordinator is a hindrance to them. It was a strange game because the Dolphins were always in control, but yet they, it felt that they never fully got out of kind of third gear, really. And some of that is that, like, it's a brand new team. There's lots of new faces there. It's a new offensive system. It'll take time to kind of all come together. For me, the biggest issue, I think, for the Patriots, I think Mac Jones is a solid QB. They'll always be reasonably okay defensively. But the trades that and the free agency acquisitions in terms of the wide receivers and the tight ends, that's their biggest issue. There's not enough speed there. There's no super big bodied guy that can go up for the contested catches, and that's, I think, why they're gonna struggle. But it is early. They have time to sort things out, but you would feel an awful lot better, I think. I would, if my team had an offensive coordinator and I could see a plan coming together. It is very difficult, in terms of the Patriots for them to have Patricia and Judge and say, these are the guys who are going to sort out the offense.
Brian, looking at both teams, any positives for the Patriots? And look, there were situations yesterday where Tua wasn't great, but the Dolphins got the job done, man. It wasn't Jarvis Landry. Jalen Waddle with a touchdown. Tyreek Hill with some big plays. It's a work in progress in Miami.
I'd say defensively they played reasonably well. I mean, you look at it, there was 8 drives with the Patriots, three turnovers, and they left them with short field range, and they still held them to 2 field goals. And then obviously they had the touchdown to Waddle, which was, again, it was yards off the catch touchdown more so than a great throw from Tua. So maybe you could argue, bear in mind the heat that the defense played well. But I agree with Colum. Like, what we've seen from the Patriots over the years is a kind of a collective approach to offense. There was never a marquee wide receiver, maybe back to the Randy Moss days, but there was Edelman, Amendola, and other players, and Gronk. It was always kind of a collaborative approach, and you'd have players in various different positions that collectively, as a unit with Brady there, they could work well. But Colum's right; they don't have the players, and where they really lost out yesterday, I felt, was the run game. Like Harris last year, when they went into Buffalo and won, and there was other games earlier in the season where they were winning games because they had a strong running game. Like that was non-existent yesterday. And I wasn't overly impressed with the Dolphins either, but I think the Dolphins will improve as the season goes on. I mean, Tua was, like Keith touched on it there, Tua was okay, but nothing special. They had some few flashy plays from Tyreek Hill and Waddle, and they had some good numbers, but they got off to a good start, and it kind of played out as we expected. I didn't expect much from the Patriots offense. I thought they missed the trick on the opening drive because it was a really good drive. They drove down, and then they start going after Howard, the best cornerback in which the Dolphins have, and there was the interception where it was tipped up. Why you go? Like, they went after him a couple of times. You don't go after the best cornerback the team has. You try to swerve him and go away from him, and put someone else on him, and try to keep the ball away from him as much as possible. But they kept going after him, and in the end, it could have cost them. And for the drive we started off at the 25 to get down around the 30, maybe 28 yard line, then for the interception. That's essentially going to change the game very quickly.
Two very quick ones I'll just touch on myself before Colum talks about the Chiefs and Superman at quarterback. And we're not talking about Cam Newton. A tie with the Texans and the Colts. Colts were interesting to watch. Texans, a lot of heart, fair play to them. Matt Ryan, it's going to take him a few weeks to get embedded into that offense, but I guess they'll be happy that the Titans lost. And the Jags Commanders game, I enjoyed watching it. The Carson Wentz experience, up and down like a yo-yo. I think he had 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. The rookie Dotson, wide receiver, enjoyable game to watch for a neutral because it was absolutely bananas. But they get the win as well, 28-22. Colum, you're going to talk about the Chiefs last night, who played great.
They did. They were absolutely fantastic, and as long as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are there, they will be there thereabouts. Led the league in yards per play, first downs per play, and success rate. 70% of their drives ended in points. And to point out, I suppose, Mahomes, 30 for 39, 360 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's the 4th player in the Super Bowl era to have that stat line above 300 yards passing, 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Each of the previous 3 went on to win MVP: Marino, Manning, and Lamar Jackson. I don't know what the Cards were thinking in terms of continuously blitzing him. I think it was because they probably had no other way to get pressure, but they just went after him, and Mahomes just picked them apart, particularly in the red zone. And I would expect that you will see the Chargers adopt a completely different approach on Thursday night, because if you are going to blitz Patrick Mahomes, he is going to have fun with you all day long.
Brian, Ravens looking really good. Lamar Jackson, some bombs down the field, and that's even without Mark Andrews getting a touchdown.
Yeah, it took a while for him to get going. The Jets fans are very disappointed today. There was a lot of high hopes, but offensively they couldn't get anything going all day. And defensively, they kept the Ravens in check for a long time, and Lamar didn't do enough in the first half. And it was only kind of towards the middle to a quarter that they started to get grips on the game. But it was kind of one of those situations where our defense has done so much, but if our offense isn't going to do anything for us, there's only so long you can hold Lamar Jackson in check. The touchdown's kind of reminded me of the game in Denver last year. If you recall, when everybody thought you'd have to beat them on the ground, that Denver defense, as opposed to with the bombs. But he put 2 bombs in yesterday, and it was a nice game for the Ravens. That kind of looked like a tricky game going into win comfortably. It's a nice start for them. For the Jets, difficult times ahead. They're away to the Browns this weekend. After the Browns win yesterday, you would expect the Browns to be. But look, who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, and Joe Flacco throwing the ball to Ravens players just like old times. A lot of Ravens fans were not happy with me on social media last night. Jets fans were not happy with me on social media last night. But it is what it is. Very quickly, Lions-Eagles, really, really enjoyable game. And Jared Goff, 2 touchdowns, interception. DeAndre Swift started the game off really, 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 really strong. And that's when I said at the start of the program, Colum, about the the whole hype about the season finally getting underway. The first hour was a bit slow, but Swift was out of the gap from the very, very start. The combination of St. Brown, Shark, and TJ, literally, I mean, St. Brown and Shark had a touchdown each. There was a 5-minute period where both St. Brown scored touchdowns. For the Eagles, they looked like Jalen Hurts didn't have any passing touchdowns, but he just looks so fresh. And the fact that you had 4 rushing touchdowns between Sanders, Hurts himself, Gainwell, and Scott shows you the sheer consistency and honestly hybrid offense that Sirianni has here, because AJ Brown had 155 yards on the day. Why the hell did they trade him? What are they at? They're going to rue that big time. Brian, before we make our game picks, I believe you have a point to make on this game because you're such a big Eagles fan. Why was this game not in the talking points? There were 73 points scored in this game. I guess it was probably the game of the day. But the one thing I will say, Brian, is the Eagles are probably sitting today wondering, well, how good are we if we let the Lions score 35 points?
That's the point. That's the point I was just about to say, Michael. The reason why it wasn't in there was because this game for a long time wasn't even covered on Red Zone or other media outlets because the Eagles were comfortable. Lions started well. Eagles kind of got to grips with the game, and then it looked like it was a comfortable win. But what I would say, the Eagles defense, I'm still not convinced by it. Like Jonathan Gannon, the defense coordinator, has had loads of interviews during this off season because he's the upcoming head coach. But I've struggled with him last year, and they were exposed in the playoff game. And Jared Goff had 16 incomplete passes, and he threw a pick 6, and they still managed to give up 35 points to a Lions offense with Jared Goff as quarterback. So I think there's more difficult days ahead, including next Monday when they play against the new MVP favourite in Kirk Cousins. So the Eagles probably are the standout team in the division right now, but I'm still thinking there's teams that will get at that defense.
Right, we got a game tonight, Monday Night Football. Broncos going up against the Seahawks in Seattle. Russell Wilson playing his first down for the Broncos after that big trade. Hasn't played in the preseason, and obviously returning to whatever it's called this week, Lumen Field. Colum, I don't even know anymore, sir, honestly. Colum, game pick, go.
It'll be loud, it'll be raucous. The Seahawks have done just about everything they can to rile up their fans and downplay what Russell Wilson did for that franchise. It's in stark contrast. Look, there was animosity between Belichick and Brady, but generally you don't see it play out in the media like it has this week. The Broncos have Randy Gregory and KJ Hamler playing, which is a plus. Right tackle is certainly going to be an issue. I think this will, be kind of a tougher game than maybe people are expecting, but I don't have any faith in Geno Smith, and generally in the NFL it comes down to the quality of the quarterback, and you can get away if their difference isn't too big. It's considerably it's a significant gulf when you talk Geno Smith and Russell Wilson. I have the Broncos winning this because Russell Wilson will want it, but I don't expect it to be a particularly high scoring game or the Broncos to run away with it.
Russell Wilson is 29-11-1 in primetime games. He'll be hitting the magical 30 tonight. I see this as a very comfortable win. Yeah, I can understand why people have this narrative that the Seahawks be well up for. Of course they will. It's week 1.
Hold on. You said the Seahawks are going to win 10 games this year. I'm holding this every week now.
They're not playing 10 games tonight, Michael. They're only playing 1. The other 9 wins.
That's a good point, Brian. Yeah. Well, that's a very, very good comeback. Well done.
Yeah, well, this is always going to be a difficult game for them. If we get this one out of the way, the NFL are very clever in putting this one on for Monday Night Football because, as I said, when this schedule came out, if this game was in November with the Seahawks season essentially out the door and the Broncos going towards a playoff contending team, it mightn't get the scrutiny this game deserves in terms of the enormity of the fact that he's gone back to Seattle. I could see Seattle hanging around. I could see it making it difficult as possible for the opening quarter, maybe 2, but I think by the third quarter the Broncos will find a way to pull away, and I think it'll be more around the run game. I think the likes of Gordon and Williams will have a nice night, and the Broncos will win come maybe 2 touchdowns.
I have the Broncos winning this game comfortably, potentially anywhere up on 14 to 21 points. I think their run game would be too much for Seattle with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. Albert Okuweganam to have at least one touchdown, and I personally think Russell Wilson's going to completely ball out against Seattle because he wants to shut them up. And I guess they'll move on to the Texans next week after that and see, but I just don't see a situation in which there can be the upset, and time will tell tonight as I smile for a Twitter picture. Okay, so we've took the sweep tonight. This is not going to happen much this season. Please God it does. But yeah, Broncos against the Seahawks is at 1:15 a.m. I'll be up. If anybody wants to tweet from this account, it would be great. Colum, are you watching the game live?
Yes, I am gonna.
There we go. There, you are the man on Twitter tonight. Excellent. Okay, folks, we're back on Thursday night at 10 o'clock. Okay, sounds good. Big thanks to everyone. I think we put a lot of the comments on the screen. Just a big thanks to everybody. Steven saying let's ride. We'll end the show on that in a second. And yeah, just thanks to everyone. There's an absolute brickload of comments. Thanks to everybody taking the time to put this onto YouTube and just comment there, because it's so much handier, folks. Just to put the comments on the screen. Really, really appreciate it. And obviously thanks to Cassidy Travel. Do check out the link. And check out the link for NFL Game Pass. We're back on Thursday night. We're back on Friday night. And we do it all over again this day next week. So until then, keep her lit. Yeah.
Enjoy the game.
I'll try my best. I'll have a 3 hour sleep. Good luck.